welcome to this very special edition of Strange New Pod. I am your supreme, I'm not the supreme leader anymore. I am back to
No.
being the host. I am your host, Giraffe, joined by Captain Hawk. Hawk, you don't have, you're still my right hand. You're still my good Ivan, my Ursula.
I
And
will always be your Ivan.
and Fleet Admiral Julian. Julian, I don't think you ever got a rank of amongst the augment. Did
No,
you?
you just made me your repair the comm tower lackey.
The other Ivan.
Yeah, the other Ivan. Yeah. That's
and
okay.
Today, even if we escaped from City Alpha 5 last week, we are back one last time. And we have two guests marooned with us, the writers of the acclaimed podcast series Star Trek Con, David Mack and Kirsten Beyer. Welcome! Thank you so much for being with us.
Glad to be here. Yeah. Delighted.
I promised that I was not gonna fangirl too much, but I'm still gonna fangirl a little bit. So Kirsten Beyer is one of the key creative voices behind modern Star Trek storytelling, multiple Voyager novels, and the short trek that still makes me weep, Children of Mars. She was also part of the core writing and producing team of Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. And I will say also, Kirsten, you wrote one of my favorite comic book, The Light of Kallest, that remains, for me, a standout. Showing talent for weaving myth, identity, philosophy into Trek's broader universe. Welcome, Kirsten.
Thank you so much.
And David Mack, you've already been on Strange New Pod. It's your third time, fourth time, say third time.
I don't know.
Definitely.
I don't. I try not to keep count.
But it's like it's the doors are always open. David Mack is an award-winning author, best known for his acclaimed Star Trek Destiny trilogy and numerous other novels. We just reviewed Ring of Fire a few weeks ago. His work is known for its emotional scope, moral complexity, and deep understanding of Trek's human core. He has also contributed to the development of Star Trek Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy, making him one of the most versatile writers shaping Star Trek across media. Thank you both for being here. I cannot say enough how much we enjoyed listening and reviewing Star Trek Con these last weeks. I can't believe it's already over. An absolute stellar audio drama that left us at the edge of our seats every week. I would like to just start by asking you, how did you get involved with this project? Was that your first time working on an audio drama, David?
My first time, yeah, actually working on one that made it to production. I had been involved in the development of a couple of audio drama projects with Realm over the last few years, but for various reasons, none of them ever quite made it out of development and into production. But as a result, I had some experience in thinking in terms of audio drama. I had gotten some experience in writing audio drama scripts. So I had at least some familiarity with the format before Kirsten called to ask me to join her on this project.
So, Kirsten, you were the first one to join that project. And same question, did you have any experience working on audio drama? Is that very different than noveling?
Yes. And it's very different from just screenplays. But yeah, so it was not the first one I'd ever done, though. A few years back, Simon & Schuster asked me to do one for the Picard series. So we did an audio drama through Simon & Schuster that they produced. And that was written by me and Mike Johnson, who is the other author of the comic, The Light of Kallest. Brilliant guy. So we did that one together. So I was familiar with many of the challenges. But yeah, so this was a project that had been announced a long time ago. First as a possible series with Nick Meyer, and then on Star Trek Day a few years back as a podcast with Nick Meyer. And it was a couple of years ago now. They were maybe a year or so into the development of that. and they asked me to come on board as well, to work with Nick. And I was like, love to. Was working on 3 other shows at the same time. So immediately was like, and I'm going to call my friend David Mack, and he is going to help me with this because time is a real thing. So yeah, that's how that all worked.
Time is indeed a real thing. Well, I know that we all loved Star Trek Con, but Julian has one particular point that he's been wanting to talk about.
Oh, I feel like I feel like on our Discord, I've been the one who's like channeled everybody who wants to talk about Ivan every week. And when I finally was able to come off my vacation and talk about Khan again, I just let out all of the Ivan emotion. So I know that we want to talk about Khan, and I know that we want to talk about Marla and everybody else, but people just like loved to hate Ivan during this show. So I just don't want to waste any time asking about how you all came up with such a great foil for Khan to deal with. And honestly, like, who might quickly go down as one of the best Trek villains in a really long time.
Ivan was a character that was very much part of Nick's original vision for the story. He always saw the Ivan Khan relationship as very central to the story and very much reminiscent for him of George Washington and Benedict Arnold. So these are 2 guys who have a very similar skill set, either one of which might have ended up in command of the Continental armies at the time of the Revolution. And because of certain qualities that each of them possessed in greater or lesser amounts, it ends up being Washington, who we revere, and Arnold, who we remember as a traitor. And what that did for me, I think, was, apart from knowing that this was going to be one of the central relationships we're following, probably the most important after Marla, was, it kind of helped me to place him as, in some ways, the guy everybody probably thought Khan was when they started listening to this. Because we knew that Khan was going to go to a lot more complicated places. And it's not that that didn't mean Ivan could. In fact, we had in our early development envisioned a much richer actual storyline with Ivan in terms of the trauma of being, such a massive soldier, his addiction issues, all of that kind of stuff. And those were things that of necessity had to get pared back. So you sort of end up with the Ivan that we have.
Just love Ivan.
Oh, he's so good. I talked about it, and when we talked about the finale, how like I thought it was like, this is not a knock on you guys by any means, how I thought it was like a little bit like, I don't know, almost like 80s cheese when he walks in, like eating the eels, but it was so good and just like so like good baddie. I don't even know how else to describe it. It just like it just made me have all these feelings, and I loved it.
The crunch of the eel.
The crunch of the eel, yes, exactly.
I remember asking Fred to bump that up. I need more eel.
More
crunch, please.
More cowbell, more eel, same thing.
Got a hunger for more eel. Yeah.
I loved Ivan. I always thought he was a great kind of a dark mirror for Khan. Amidst all those other influences that they had, like, Ivan was definitely the little devil sitting on his shoulder in that, telling him that this is the only person you need to be in this new place.
Yeah. But also I think he was in some ways the other love interest, right? Like Ivan really did start this thing loving Khan and needing Khan to constantly be the same thing in his life, his true north and sort of guiding star. And when that started to change, it just completely destabilizes Ivan. Not that he's the most stable guy to begin with, but yeah.
I'd like to ask a little bit about one of the things we're really impressed with was the production quality throughout the entire series, and that from the performance and the casting, Naveen Andrews, Ren Schmidt, like that was a great get. I loved her in For All Mankind. The original music composed for it was always beautiful. I was wondering, like, did this always start out being an audio drama in that, or did you envision it like for other media, or this was what made sense for this particular story?
Once it came to me and then with David, it was an audio drama. There was no question that that's what we were doing. Yeah. So we had to start it from that mindset, and you begin from a very different place when you do that, right? Because your eyes are closed and you're like, this story can only happen by what I can hear. So how many things can I hear? You know.
Did you already have the cast when you started working on it, or so you didn't have the voice of the cast to write from? It was all in your head, right?
I mean,
Incredible.
we had the voice of Khan,
Yeah.
but you know, and the voice of Marla from Space Seed. So we had a place to begin, but everybody else,
Yeah, we had to start thinking from a blank page about who do we want to populate this world with, and we built their voices. We did our best to make them all distinct, and then we had to sort of roll with the changes, and you start rewriting, and certain characters get folded together, and yeah, that's how the sausage gets made.
Yeah.
process.
I mean, I know you listen to our reviews and you know how much I am interested in the classical tragedy that we can see in Khan. I mean, I'm a classicist myself, and I could not recognize, you know, those great classical figures that we see in the tragedy. That Agamemnon, for example. I'm an Hellenist. I'm not so much a Shakespearean. So Khan often feels like a figure straight out of classical Greek tragedy, a character that's both heroic but also doomed by his own nature. Why did you decide to lean into that classical framework? We'll talk a little bit later about the romantist.
Yeah, spoilers. The tragedy was Nick, and the romanticist was me. So,
Ah.
with my English lit background, so so again, the structure of tragedy was also very much Nick's goal with this. He had, though, I think, a slightly different take on it, in the sense that for him, he sort of started this with sort of clearing the slates of everything he knew about Khan, like what he was in Space Seed, what he was in Wrath, and just telling the story of this guy who, despite all of these obstacles, was going to ultimately transcend his nature.
Yeah.
And we were going to sort of leave him on this high point of, wow, he learned. And
But that's
and
not tragedy.
and I was sort of the, guy coming in later going, yeah, except he's not tragedy. And we have Wrath of Khan to reckon with. And he was like, they're going to be there for 10 more years. People will figure it out. I'm like, no, see, it's a tie-in. No, they don't. That doesn't. We have to really actually land connecting those dots. So that's sort of what meant that Kali had to be there. Kali had to die. We had to have that last turn. So,
And what, like, that framework, did that let you explore something about Khan that pure science fiction would not let you, in your opinion? David, I don't know if you're a tragedian.
I've certainly written my share of tragedy, and I mean, obviously, as you said, you are more of an Hellenist, so you would understand what I mean when I say that what we wanted to explore was Khan's hamartic flaw, that intrinsic flaw in his nature that's always going to sabotage him. And with him, I think it's pride. I think really the sin of pride is the chief downfall, and it's what eventually leads him to madness. So if Nick had sort of brought in this desire for tragedy and Kirsten brought in the desire for romance, I was sort of interested in finding where those two meet. And I found that Shakespearean inspiration for me is where those two tend to match up. So I was thinking in terms of a little bit Lear, a little bit Macbeth, a little bit of the king seeing his kingdom slipping away, a little bit of the mad king or the mad ambition that cannot be denied. So he's a little bit driven the way Macbeth was driven, but he's also, as the climate disaster happens with the destruction of SETI Alpha 6, he's contending with watching everything he dreamed of slip from his grasp the way Lear watches everything he's built slip from his grasp. So we were drawing inspiration from those two sources.
The good taste of hubris, right?
I have a follow up to what we just talked about. And that kind of leads me into my next question about whether this was always kind of like, going to be a podcast from Hawk's question. you know, Kirsten, you had mentioned that there was very early talks that it might have had the potential to be a series. I love this as an audio drama. I love audio dramas in general, but we've gone through the whole series now, and I guess my question is, do either of you wish at all that it had maybe been a series, or are you happy that it ended up being this medium?
Happy, to be honest with you. I think that the only sort of like caveat to that is the reach of the story, because I want as many people to experience it as possible. And I think there's going to be a certain, well, I don't do Star Trek by ear, so like,
No, I mean, sorry to
you know
interrupt
what
you.
I'm saying?
That's a great answer, because I mean,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest, like we're dealing with that just with our listenership. Like people are
Right.
like sitting on it. I'm like, no, when Giraffe especially is like, listen to this. It's so good. And people are just not for some
I've
reason.
been harassing everybody in my Rolodex. Like, have you listened? I want to talk about it. I have friends who are English major, and I was like, listen to it. They speak about Coleridge.
That's awesome. And I think actually though too, had it been a visual story, had they, even if they done it as a limited series, it would have been different.
Right.
It would not be this, and I'm just kind of in love with this now. So I don't really, want it to be anything else.
I mean, it
It's
could be they could take this audio and do animation to match it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Just throwing that out there in case anyone's listening.
I would love to see what the Elborians look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
No,
they look like something in
we
my-
described them. Think
Yeah,
Ziggy Stardust. You know.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I find it's the closest you're to get in writing to like a TOS in this era, and that it's more driven by the imagination than anything. It's dialogue heavy, and exposition heavy, and that's what propels the story forward. It would not have worked in modern TV or media standards. SETI Alpha 5 would have been the character, and that everybody else would just be living in it.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Hawk. That kind of leads to, this is actually one of our questions from one of our Badmirals, our executive producers, Tara, who asked if you guys, now that this is complete, would be more interested in doing Trek-based plays or, more backstories about characters like we got for Khan using this medium.
We're always interested in telling more great Trek stories, whether they are backstories that go into the character's background, their history, their psychology, or simply exploring a chapter of their life that's not yet been dramatized, or if it's a whole new story with new characters that just happens to tell us something new about the Star Trek universe. We're always interested in that, regardless of medium, whether it's a novel, a short story, a feature film, a TV series, an audio drama, heck, a stage play. We're always interested in telling a good story.
Yeah, that's true. I think where I'm hesitating is like the more I think about this, because I've been getting this question a lot, the more my personal instinct is I want to tell new stories.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, it's not that I'm over the 900 hours of stuff that has come before, and there's not that there aren't big, blank spots on that canvas that have yet to be filled in, but I don't know. I want new people and new things right now.
I mean, I absolutely agree. I feel that when we were kids, we got to experience new Star Trek characters, new ships, new storytelling, new eras, and we were still driven to follow the stories. And I feel that with Starfleet Academy coming up, I'm happy that there are new branches of Star Trek opening left and right for new generation to come and be. I grew up on Starfleet Academy, for example, and that's great. I think that shapes that will shape a lot of people too, and I'm happy to see new types of character and new stories. I'm a TOS fan. I'm like, but
I'm a fan of all of it.
I didn't know that, Giraffe.
So I would like to talk about Marla MacGyvers, and by extension, like the hugely female cast that drove this story. We've loved having Marla not only challenging Khan's worldview, but attempting to nurture those qualities in him that were lacking, as discussed in Imagination's Limits. can we discuss her story? Why you wanted to give her that voice?
I think the first part is just the contrast with what we were given in Space Seed, right? I mean, for me, Space Seed, like many episodes of TOS, in terms of the female characters, is problematic.
Yeah.
I don't look at that relationship and go, oh, I want to know more about that. I look at that and go, somebody should call the police because this is abuse, right? So there was no way that was going to be romanticized in any way. And that is a thing. There are very few things, but that is one thing that just knocks me out of a story. I don't care anymore. I'm done. So there had to be a way to make her more than that, but also still honor the fact that we saw that some of that shit happens. So what do we do? And I think the first clue was really in her actions in the episode and in the things she said, right? She does speak very, very briefly too, but sort of like her sense of isolation. It's not cool to walk in the room and have the captain not know your fucking name, right? And even though you have a big job, right? And it's not, and she is a Starfleet officer. She's trained. She knows all the stuff, right? Even when Khan says, I'm gonna take the ship, she's like, don't ask me to do that. Right. And then when he does it anyway, right in front of her, she's like, I don't need to watch this. Then she goes and saves her captain. So, like, I think the overriding vision of her, or impression of her is that she's some sort of soft, weak, oh, I'm so in love with you, Khan.
Meek.
Yeah, kind of person. Her actions belie that. And I don't think very many people remember that. But those were sort of like the critical things that we had to start building from as we developed her character for this. Because, I knew I wanted this to be a love story that people actually cared about. And if there's such a huge imbalance of power between them, you're not going to care about it. You're never going to really like that relationship. So somehow we had to make sure that there was, that she was someone that Khan would actually see as an equal to him, which I don't think had ever happened in his life before he met her. Right. And sort of take it from there.
That's that's a great answer. I again, TOS fan, I was so happy to have any development on any woman from the original series. Like we've seen with Uhura or Chappelle in Strange New Worlds, but like when I get a little bit of dimensions of any of those women, it's really fascinating to me. It gives so much more strength to Space Seed to have this backstory around it. It's thank you.
Well, and like Hawk said, I mean, what a get to get Ren Schmidt to play Marla, who just absolutely knocked it. I mean, and listen, I think that we all loved Naveen Andrews in the role of
Yes.
Khan.
Yes.
But I mean, Ren I think just took that whole show and ran with it. I mean, she was amazing.
She loved it from the time she read it, and she loves, Madeline Rue's portrayal of Marla from the episode. She saw things in that performance that I didn't even pull out, and she was like, "Oh no, she's got this, she's got that." I'm like, "Excellent," And then just as a performer, she is so layered and so nuanced and so complex, and is just incapable of being of a false note. Like it's just, yeah, it was heaven working with her and with Naveen, obviously.
Yeah, I think we are all very happy to see Naveen Andrews portraying Khan because I think it's the first time that Khan is actually portrayed by an actor who's actually from the same cultural background that Khan Noonien Singh should be. And I mean, that is also a beloved actor. I've written in the outline, if there is time, did you meet Naveen Andrews? Question mark, question mark,
Yeah.
question mark.
Yeah, I got to record with him. Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't get
nice.
to be in the studio with Ren because she was in New York, but he was in LA. So,
That's
and we
awesome.
actually had a big meeting before we recorded. We sat down for a couple of hours, Fred and Naveen and I. He was like, tell me everything about Khan. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And we started at the beginning and, walked through the whole thing. So,
Yeah, was it important? I mean, I don't know how much involved you were in the casting, but was casting Khan, I suppose, was a big conversation, right? And choosing an actor that actually, I will say with quotation mark, rectify into darkness when
And
it comes
and
to, yeah.
to be honest, all of the actors that we were looking at would have done that. That was
Hmm.
number one, like, requirement. And it really became a matter of who was available, who was really interested in doing it.
Hmm.
And when Naveen said yes, it was just like, done. We're moving on.
Yeah.
Like, it was we were thrilled.
Absolutely. I'm gonna come back to my first love, which is talking about hubris. And we've talked during the review, especially of the finale, that we have more and more of those shows that are, questioning men's hubris. And in Khan, in the context of both Khan himself and more broadly how humanity creates and destroys its own ideals. How do you see talking about the issues with pride and legacy and hubris among people that feeling like they're the supreme leader? How do you see that theme resonating with our world today and the audiences?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack right
David.
there. I guess first thing would be to think about the relationship between Khan and Marla in a similar fashion to, say, the relationship between Michelle and Barack Obama, in which, he once said, that Michelle sort of made him the man he was, and that, she had said that she had dated other guys in college, and he said, "Yeah, if you'd been with one of them, somebody else would be first lady." She goes, "No, if I'd been with one of them, they'd be president."
Yeah, exactly.
So I like to think that in that respect, we were sort of channeling that idea that Marla is not just there to ride Khan's coattails. She sees the potential for greatness in him, and she sees the mistakes that he made historically. And I think on some level, she knows that if she can win his trust and be at his right hand, that she can steer him in a way that he can become the great figure that he has the potential to be, that he can overcome the shortcomings, that he can move beyond pride and think like somebody who's there for his people and not for himself.
Mhm.
And he almost gets him there. He's almost there. He's on the verge. He had it in his hand, and then fate just takes it away. It's like
Ah, fate.
the Alborians arrive, and he cannot get out of his us versus them mindset. The moment it's no longer just him and his people owning a planet, the moment there's a hint that there's anybody else who could possibly be in the game, he goes right back to combat. He goes right back to antagonism, right back to there's us and there's them.
Mhm.
And it takes a while to break him out of that mindset. But once that paranoia is reignited, he never really recovers from it.
Yeah, and I think it's such a Star Trek theme, right? It's not us versus them, it's us and them. It's us with them. It's just
Mm-hmm.
us, basically. The ability of creating an us with so many people, and the fact that Khan is unable to step into these ideal. Is he just a man of our times?
He feels like a man of our times for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think Star Trek really aspires more to the Buddhist idea that there is no us, there is no them, there is no me, there is no you. We are all one. There is the concept that we are separate beings with separate destinies is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that and you talking about how, Marlo is there to, maybe like help shape him and get him to the man that she thought that he could really be. It's one of the things that we discussed, I think, during the finale that we may have, I forget if we all agreed or disagreed on this. I think it was mixed. That I personally believe had Marla lived, that I think Khan could have been that leader of people if he'd had kind of like her voice there as well. But losing Marla just kind of, yeah, he, like you
It,
said, he reverts back.
it broke it.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of the potential of being a great leader, whose ideas it was to bring Coldridge and Kubla Khan in this story?
Kirsten.
Kirsten.
Me.
So what drew you to those particular voices? I teach a full class on French romantics. I'm not as versed when it comes to English, but those themes are all over the story, and I'd like to know why Kubla Khan, except for the name. I'm sure there are more reason, and how did their themes help shape the tone and emotional landscape of the story?
I was probably halfway through my first set of revisions, and getting into episode 5. And so it's one of those dumb things. I was an English lit major, and there were lots of pieces of literature over the years that I had to memorize, and many of them live in my head. And in Xanadu, Kubla Khan, a stately pleasure dome, is one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kept nagging at me. And I remember literally like stopping writing and just going on the internet and like looking it up and being like, and reading the whole thing and going, are you fucking kidding me? There's the
I know.
Palestinian man. There's the sunless sea. There's he drunk the milk of paradise. Well, folks, and it just felt like, oh, well, this is, it tracked so closely already with everything that we were building. And in some ways it helped me give more form and structure to the end, because the end of this story is a beast. Like once the Elborians arrive, we've got a couple episodes to set up all of that, and then we're going to jump 5 years into the future for the last two. So it's a lot. So it sort of became like an emotional and thematic organizing principle for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are so many different literary references in in that show. I mean, there's the great epic, right? We can see a little bit of the Iliad or the Odyssey. We can see, yeah, the Romantics with Coleridge, and also we see Shakespeare. So, David, Shakespeare comes from you. That's
A little bit.
a little.
Kirsten and I discussed the Shakespearean qualities of the story while we were doing the episodic breaks, figuring out the shape of the story. The funny thing is that she had this desire to go with the Coleridge Kubla Khan thing for her organizing principle, and this happened after I had written my drafts.
Mhm.
And a lot of fans, when this thing came out, they saw that and thought Kubla Khan came from me, because Kubla Khan was the basis for a song by Canadian prog rock band Rush called Xanadu that they released back in the 70s. A lot of my fans know I'm a huge Rush fan. And so they see the Kubla Khan reference and they're like, oh, that's Mac, sneaking in those Rush references. No, wasn't me. Wasn't me.
Hey, they're back on tour this year.
I love it, but it wasn't me.
That's, I mean, I think that those references also for me brought a dimension to the character of Khan, in the idea
Mhm.
that when I watch Star Trek, I'm French, right? And one of my pet peeve is that Picard always quotes Shakespeare. No French quotes Shakespeare. We quote Moliere. We quote, French authors.
Why not Voltaire?
Well, or Voltaire, or Rousseau, or like you name it, right? But I was always, it's always Shakespeare, it's always Moby Dick, it's always, But for
Yeah.
Khan, I think it's also speak of how the augments were brought up in with people that were not necessarily culturally reference on the culture that Khan is supposed to be from, right? So I thought it added such a layer of complexity on how the augment were brought, and we see young Khan in Strange New Worlds, in Toronto. And I think there's also a story to say about, being uprooted and not being brought in a family, in a culture, and with people that are have the same reference that you're supposed to have, and his attachment that he has to Shakespeare and the Romantics, I think for me meant a lot as, as a French person who's also attached to a certain type of literature. So I don't know if it's anything you thought about when you brought that character to life, but I know that for me it meant a lot. It meant a lot of question for how Khan was educated and also how he's educating Kali. Does that make any sense?
Hmm.
Is that something you built into the character from the beginning?
And it's interesting that she chose Coleridge and Kubla Khan
Mhm.
as the organizing principle, because if you know about the writing of the poem, that it was inspired by kind of an opium dream, and that Coleridge was interrupted as he was trying to get his vision, trying to transcribe this vision he'd had. He was interrupted by an insurance salesman, and he could
I
not
didn't know that.
a door-to-door insurance salesman interrupted him. It was very pushy. He couldn't get rid of the guy for like an hour, and by the time he finally got this person out of his house, the vision was gone. He'd lost it. So in that respect, the poem of Kubla Khan, because it is incomplete, because it is unfortunately cut off in progress because of the interruption that Coleridge suffered, it also speaks to great enterprises begun but not completed. To aspirations that are preemptively cut off due to fate, which is what happens to Khan. The experiment of the augments on Earth is cut off. His chance at redemption on Ceti Alpha 5 starts great, but it is again preemptively cut off just as it's getting going. And Kubla Khan, because of its incomplete nature, speaks to that as well.
Yeah, that's I mean, again, I could talk about this for hours, but I'm mindful of the time. So I have one more question, and then I don't know if Julian and Hawk. I'm sorry, I'm like monopolizing the question, but
That's okay. You've been running the
We knew
show.
you would. That's the whole point. We love it. We're here for it.
Kirsten, I spoke about Light of Callus that actually I reviewed when it came out, and I really like this comic because I love the anthropological and societal subtlety and exploration that we get for the Klingons there, which are aliens that usually don't get so much subtlety, don't get to explore their belief and their system and like the what happens if you're not like the other Klingons, like here and there, But I feel the Light of Callus went so deep in this question, especially of religion. Um, I love the way you explored how groups of people create and sustain myths. And we see something similar in Khan with the process of myth making, of the legacy, of the legend of the man, right? Among the augments, as they struggle to define themselves and who they are and what will be their legacy. So I'd like to know if there is any of that experience of working with Klingons that influence your approach of cultural and mythic dimension in Khan's story.
I mean, for better or for worse, starting out as a novelist means I have more room in my stories to always go deeper
Mm-hmm.
than any episode of television, or even any film, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about building worlds and building cultures and alien races, whether they are known or unknown, I have to answer a lot of these questions for myself because I can't create characters who come from a place unless I understand the place that they came from. Whether any of that stuff ever makes it on the page or not, I have to know these things for myself. And one of the most exciting things, honestly, about starting to work on Discovery was Brian Fuller's commitment to expanding our understanding of, like you said, these alien races that had been so one-dimensional, if maybe two-dimensional, for all of that. So he was all about that, and I'm just like, awesome. So he gives us a Klingon in Chekavma who's very, very different from any Klingon that we've ever seen before, and I get to go, great. How did that happen? And the
Yes.
minute you start asking yourself, okay, well, there's 24 houses. Are they always the same 24 houses? Do they fight over that? Like, how does this all? And we'd also had like glimpses from time to time. There had been novelists in the past. John Ford was one of them with The Final Reflection, who did an extraordinary job, right, of creating this vision of Klingon culture from the original series era that was complex and amazing and beautiful and gross all at the same time. Very relatable to us as humans, but also extreme in violence in some ways that was just incredible. So that's just what I do. And in the case of Khan, honestly, the thing that because like on the one hand, I felt like Khan was going to be a master of what we all consider the classics, right? Because he would know all that stuff by heart, not just like have read it once, but like, you know, somebody says Milton to him and he can give you Paralyte. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's going to come out, right? But, you know, there had been that, I think there's one line in Space Eater. She's like, he might have been Sikh.
Yeah.
And, you know, in Nick's early versions of this, you know, it had that definite Western perspective, right? In the beginning, right? And you know, Kali was actually named Eve, right? So there was a point in the work where I was like, okay, if he's Sikh, what does that mean? And I did, you know, a deep dive, as deep as I could, into what I could begin to understand of that perspective and that point of view. So for me, this whole issue of eternity and the nature of eternity, that comes from that tradition. And I did everything I could to sort of let him own that and embody that and carry that through. This belief that fundamentally there is no beginning, there is no end. It's just the eternal trying to perfect itself through these forms. And the tragedy of finally believing the final perfect form is fire. Like I just, you know, it all just, that's what happens.
Yeah. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Julian and Hawk, anything to add? I have many other questions. I want to talk about the Elborians, but
I have one question that I thought of kind of as we're talking, is something that we talked about again, I think during the finale, and also figuring out, you know, that it was the Elborians that destroyed City Alpha 6 unintentionally. But that's the Jim Kirk of it all, of, you know, the fact that, yes, this series clears Jim Kirk of any wrongdoing of knowing what was going to happen. But what I like is that it also explores that it doesn't clear him of wrongdoing at all, right? Because he makes the choice without really thinking it, I think, all the way through. I think I referred to it, you know, this was during the Wild West era of Star Trek.
Yep.
Instead of going to Starfleet and instead of going through proper channels, he makes a snap decision, which is well within his right to Starship Captain, to maroon these people on this planet with minimal supplies and a chance. And I like how the series explored it. And I think it would have been easy, not in a good way, easy to kind of shoehorn Jim Kirk into the series. I'm glad you didn't. But I like that he's almost like a ghost, you know, throughout these episodes. And I wonder if that was your guys' intention while writing this.
Well, it's funny you use the word ghost because it's established that the framing sequences take place shortly after he's believed to have died during the incident on the Enterprise B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's all again like that mythical figure for Sulu, right?
Mhm.
Who refuses to discuss anything. Nobody wants to discuss Jim Kirk, and these ideas like is almost a parallel of like the great man that can do no wrong, when like Khan is the great man that did everything wrong, the one we hate, the one we love, the one we follow, we want the one that should not be an example. um uh, how do you think that this question of mythical man or great historical figure, where do you think you left the audience there? Some people said that you're trying to give some redemption to Khan. I said that. Julian said that it was not a redemption story. Are we just in the gray? Is that the moral of it all, that everybody's complex?
Definitely not redemption, right? But definitely, I don't believe anybody is bad or good. People are people. And so it's just impossible for me to disregard, you know, off the bat that Khan could ever have had a redeeming quality, a good moment, a nice day, like whatever. Like it's very clear to me that the Khan who was on Earth, whatever he did, and we know very, very little about that. And the information we do have is pretty contradictory, right?
Yeah.
And then you throw in he was raised in a lab, and I'm like, okay, who were the guys holding the keys? Like who, you know, because those guys are the motherfuckers I really want to talk to, right? Who decided that was a good idea? You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And Ursula gets some of that rage.
Mhm.
She's like, it's just like, what were we, So there is so you can't say he didn't do what he did on Earth. You can't say he didn't do what he did in Wrath of Khan. I don't think any of those things are the sum total of a person's life. And so what I wanted to do was see as many different aspects of that as possible. He's going to be a different man when he is with his people and he's safe and everything is fine. Like, we know that there were certain augments who rose up against each other on Earth. That's a little piece of history. Do I think any of them made it on the Botany Bay and are with him now? No. These are his people. These are the ones who were loyal to him from the beginning and who he could trust implicitly. So once they get there, it's a totally different dynamic between them. He doesn't have to be the asshole, although it still, flickers out from time to time, right?
Yeah.
Because he can't help himself because he's Khan. For me, like, the bigger challenge was conquering another group of people and building a civilization are two fundamentally different activities.
Yes.
And he is designed to do one and incredibly poorly equipped to do the other. So it's funny because, like, in a lot of times there would be frustration in episodes. Why are the augments being so dumb? It's like, well, they're good at what they're good at, right? There are lots of different kinds of intelligence. They're incredibly, the IQ stuff, the problem solving and remembering shit. They're good at that.
Mhm.
The adversarial intelligence, meaning how resilient are you? They're incredibly good at that. But emotional intelligence, social intelligence, they have zero. And that is where they tend to fail, right?
Mhm.
In these interactions. So making sure that we are creating situations where those are the stories that can be told. That's what can be explored, is we're taking Khan out of his comfort zone and watching him constantly try to flee back into it,
And I love this because I feel that right now in the narrative that we see in our society, there is a tendency to imagine that evil is all evil and that people are just bad to the core and that's all that they are. And no, humans are complex. They have good days, they have bad days, good ideas, bad ideas. But it doesn't mean redemption. I
And
love this.
some people are kind within their tribal group, but
Mhm.
extremely vicious and evil and cruel to those who they consider members of the out group. So sometimes it's a matter of code switching. It's a matter of environment.
Yeah. But
Thank you.
I think it's too easy and convenient. And I think it's too safe for us to be able to say, oh, well, we don't have to deal with that because that's just bad. And we know we're not bad.
Hmm.
Like, no, we are all the things. And you just don't know what's going to tip any one of us over into the other.
We are all biased and we're all flawed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a classic trope of the murder mystery. Everybody has it in them to kill. You just got to know what the trigger is.
We just talked about that, yeah.
I mean, I may think of myself as a pretty easygoing, peaceful guy, but I know that there are situations where if somebody were to cross me, if my wife was in danger, if someone was going to hurt one of my cats, somebody would be getting a baseball bat to the head.
Yep. Same goes for my
Noted.
kids. Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
You touch my wife,
Yep.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
On those good words that we're all potentially murderers.
Because we are, right?
I love
we are
interviewing
angry
authors.
monkeys. We are angry monkeys.
I always say we're monkeys with anxiety.
I think
Facts.
that's right.
We're
Facts.
monkeys who think too much.
Exactly. We see too many possibilities and too many of them may be bad.
And this is why I drink.
Yeah.
On these good words, we are at the end of our interview. I had so many more questions. I
Yeah.
cannot tell you how many more things I wanted to talk about Mado, about pregnancy, about Ursula, about the Alborians, about all this. But it is time already, and this is the tragedy of it all. Where can people find you? Any upcoming project? Anything you want to tell us or can tell us? David, let's start with you.
If you want to find me on social media, I'm on Blue Sky as David Mack. If you just want to find out what I'm doing, what I have coming out, and you don't want to see all of my various foul-mouthed political screeds on Blue Sky, you can follow davidmack.pro on Blue Sky. That's my work-only feed. You'll just get book announcements and work announcements and public appearances and things like that. You can find my website at davidmack.pro. And that's usually a good place to see what my existing bibliography is. You can find out if I've got new stuff coming out, it'll be posted on the front page. As far as what I have coming up, I'm working on a new book that'll be out next year, but I'm not allowed to announce too many details about it. I have a new original short story that's coming out in an anthology next year. Again, not yet formally announced by the publisher, so I have to be somewhat circumspect about the details. So I'm working on things. I have some stuff, some bread I've cast upon the water that I'm trying to see if it'll turn into a banquet at some point. And I'm hoping that Kirsten and I might do more audio dramas someday.
Yes.
Please, that would be amazing.
Kirsten, same question.
I'm unfindable because I can't. I just don't. I figured as social media was becoming a thing and a lot of authors were a part of it, it became clear to me that there was a full-time job aspect of that. And I already had a couple of those. So I couldn't. And now it's nice because it sort of keeps my brain clear of all of it. I love that this is all conversation that's happening in the world. And I certainly I find it like I found you guys, right? Talking about con. And I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Like just because of the way in which you approach the material, the seriousness with which you take it, all of the ideas that it sparked in you, like that is just joy to me to think that that's what happened when you listened to this. Like, so it was, it's been a great joy. In terms of what I'm working on, I am currently finishing up on season 2 of Starfleet Academy. And beyond that, I have a couple of other projects that I'm developing that I'm working very hard on right now. And I don't know exactly what the future holds. I think we're all in a bit of a holding pattern in terms of the trek of it all. And you'll probably know when I know.
I wish you both to continue making more Trek because I very, very like it and enjoy it. And I promise to review it all.
It's like we do a Star Trek podcast or something.
Yay! Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to sign off. Julian, what do we have next week?
Yeah, so if you've been paying any attention to our YouTube feed and our podcast feed, we just wrapped up the Star Trek Adventures 2nd edition starter campaign with our patrons. We've been releasing those every week. That's from Modifius Entertainment. And I'm going to be sitting down with 3 of the writers of that campaign, which I'm just like ridiculously excited about. I'm recording that tomorrow, actually. Al Spader, I hope I get this name right. I'm sorry if I don't, you'll correct me tomorrow. Michael Dismuke and Merrick Moire. So cannot wait for that. That's going to be awesome. That'll be Thursday, 9:30 p.m. next week.
Yeah, thank you so much again. And this is Stranger Pod signing off. Live long and prosper. Majram. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for beaming into our podcast today. If you want to keep the hailing frequencies open, you can subscribe on Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. Like what you hear? Put in a good word with Starfleet and leave us a 5-star review.